Y'all already know what it is. Jay Williams, Let's Live Life, and we're back. Jail, prison, detention center, all around incarceration. Are you cut for that life? Ask yourself that if you've never done time. Could you spend your days locked up, away from your family, surrounded by the worst that society has to offer? When it comes down to it, are you going to defend yourself? We've all heard women say, he's such a sweet man, he's such a kind-hearted man, he would never hurt nobody. If you're one of those men and something happens in life, whether it be your fault or not your fault, and you end up in that situation, could you handle it? A lot of guys couldn't. Today we're going to talk on that. Today we're going to talk about when guys can't handle being locked up. When they decide, I'd rather not exist than exist here. And thinking about it, it's nothing new. I was sitting here just clearing my thoughts for today's video, and I thought back on it. And it's something that, as far back as I can think, when it comes to my life and my incarceration, even my teen years, that there's just so many situations where guys couldn't take it. They couldn't fathom the thought of being there, going there, being in there. So they took another route. Today's video is going to be intense, to say the least. Y'all know I'd have seen it. Y'all know I'd have lived it, man. So it's time to relive it. Before we get into today's video, I want to respond to a comment somebody made, and I want to clear something up. Somebody in one of my videos yesterday said, Jay, it looks like your nose is bleeding. I hope you're not doing that type of stuff. We need you. Be careful. My nose is not bleeding. I don't put anything up my nose. I don't do any drugs. That's just an effect from the light coming through the window, shining through my white nostril and reflecting the red from the inside. I can turn my head several different ways right now, and it'll appear the same way. Now, nothing in there but mustache and nose hairs. So I just wanted to make that clear to y'all. I don't condone the use of drugs. I randomly piss my guys, and I'm the first one to piss in the cup because I believe in leading by example. So shout out for that comment. I noticed it when I did the video. I'm like, damn, why does my nose look so red when I turn certain ways? It almost looks like I got a bloody nostril. But no, I ain't done no drugs, man. I've not been in no fights. That's not something y'all gotta worry about with me. With the age I'm at now, I know better. I know what I like and I don't like. I don't want to do no drugs. There's nothing any drug can do for me. Let's get into the video. Death has played a major role in my life for pretty much as far back as I can think. If you watch this through some of my older stories, I remember at 7 years old, the two little boys I used to play next door with, the mom would babysit me, and my mom came home for lunch one day, and I went home, and she was gonna go back to work. And in the time that I was at my mom's house, these two little boys got to playing with a lighter, set the bedroom they were in on fire, hid in the closet, and they ultimately lost their lives. These are things I can remember from being 7. I can still remember looking out the window as they brought their bodies out, and my mom telling me, you don't need to see that, stop looking. But I didn't really understand to the full extent what I was seeing and what was going on. I didn't understand the gravity of what death meant. So I was intrigued by it. I watched the firefighters battle the fire, and watched the mother stand outside screaming, my children are in there, my children in there. Looking back on it, had my mom not have come home from work that day for lunch, she worked right up the street, I wouldn't be here. I would have been in that trailer with those two little boys, and I would have, perished in the flames with them. The age of 12, my favorite uncle killed himself. They said he killed himself. I guess that's all they could prove, but at the time there was this major feud going on between him and some other people, all behind drugs. He was found sitting in his living room, a shotgun between his legs. Certain things were missing out the house that his family members knew shouldn't be missing. There's no way things that he kept in his pocket, rings he kept on, and things of that nature should be gone, but they were gone. But the police ultimately ruled it a suicide. High school, I got a friend. I hadn't thought about this in a very long time. I hadn't thought about this guy. You know, life goes on. It's just the sad reality of it. But I went to high school with this guy, and due to the fact that he was a juvenile at the time, I'm going to leave his name out of it. A lot of people from my area are going to know exactly who I'm talking about. Me and this guy didn't live anywhere near each other. We didn't live in the same neighborhood. The only time we would really kick it is when we skipped school. I'm 16, he's 16. We got a group of us. We'll skip. One day we might be at, this person's house. One day we might be at this person's house. We might be posted up at a McDonald's down the street. We might be, in the woods behind the school, or at a playground somewhere, on the railroad tracks, under the bridge, wherever. We're going to find somewhere to skip at. That's how me and dude got real close. And out the gate, like, soon as we met, we linked up through the fact that, at that age, I was smoking weed real heavy. We weren't smoking Rellos back then. We weren't smoking Raps. Like, we were smoking, Phillies, Dutch Masters, White Owls, Garcia Vegas. We were cracking full-size cigars and, dumping 5-6 grams in a blunt. He decides he don't just, ain't gonna just smoke weed. He's gonna start selling weed. He's selling weed all throughout the school. Me and this dude, we had several classes together, so we kick it in class, we kick it at lunch, we kick it before school. If we was riding with somebody going home, we might catch a ride with the same dude. We'd smoke a lot of weed together. With him selling weed in school, which is stupid, because somebody's definitely going to tell on you. You smell like weed. You done missed a whole bunch of days, and he smoked cigarettes, so you smell like cigarettes. Like, there's a good chance you're going to get searched smelling like this combination of weed and cigarettes. One thing leads to another. Somebody tells on him, he gets caught with a whole bunch of weed in school. Police come, the police arrest him. And it's not just a small amount. He's got a lot of weed bagged up. I'm talking several ounces bagged up in nicks and dimes. $5 bags and $10 bags. Because the average high schooler ain't got enough money to buy a quarter or buy an ounce. They're buying nickels and dimes, right? They take him to the detention center. He'd never been in trouble before. And I remember in '96, the detention center was packed. They were letting guys out early and turning guys away because they had nowhere to put them. There were so many people that year that were incarcerated that you had to have more of the serious nature of crime to actually get to stay in there or be a repeat offender. So his mom comes and picks him up that evening from the detention center. They don't have a lot of money. He gets a public pretender, a public defender. One of these lawyers that his main goal is to get you to plead out. That way he can get paid. He's not going against the prosecutor when you're caught red-handed. He's not trying to get in there like they do on TV and fight this case. He's going to say, hey, this is what I can give you, and this is what's going to happen. Well, they've got him scared. They've got him thinking beyond a doubt that he is going away for a while. Dude's freaking out. I talked to him, on the phone here and there. They done put him out the school, expelled him from the school for the weed stuff. Well, we would call each other. I call him up, like, so what they saying? He's like, man, they're talking about sending me upstate. And for y'all that don't know what upstate means, upstate it's like juvenile prison. It's where you go after you've been convicted. If you've got time and you leave the detention center, you go from the detention center upstate. That's where, child killers go until they go to prison, until they turn 18, 21, whatever the state allows. He's like, man, they're talking about sending me upstate for this distribution charge, distribution of marijuana. Like, they're really talking about sending me upstate. He had a bullshit, bogus-ass lawyer that was more or less trying to give the Commonwealth, which is what Virginia is, the prosecutor, what they wanted. I remember the day he was supposed to go to court. We had talked a couple days prior to it, and I was like, look, man, no matter what happens, And I've told a lot of people this, and I feel the same way. You ain't kill nobody. Like, they gotta let you go. It ain't that bad, man. It's just, you're just gonna be locked up. You'll be all right. He talked a good game. He had me convinced that he was cool with whatever happened. I could tell he was nervous, but I didn't see it being like anything that was like a big deal. To me, it wasn't a big deal, because at this point in life, I'd already spent so much time at the detention center that it was kind of like, you know, same song and dance, like riding a bicycle. Like, if I was in his shoes, it's just like, well, shit, here we go again. You know what I mean? I'm gonna miss another school year, locked back up. The day he goes to court, I'm in school, and I'd say it's towards the end of the day, I start hearing a rumor. And the rumor is that he killed himself. And there's all types of like different rumors being spread, but they're all based around the same thing, that homeboy killed himself. And I'm like, man, hell, I'll start to get mad at people. Like, y'all need to stop talking shit, stop spreading rumors. I don't know how people got this information. Like, why would y'all be saying that? Like, I'm really getting irritated at the fact that y'all speaking on my homeboy's name and trying to make him look like a clown, or like, you know what I mean? Like, y'all just tarnishing his name like he would do something like that. Stop. I get home that evening and I call his house. Nobody answers the phone. I call all throughout the night. Nobody answers the phone. Next morning before I get up for school, I call his house. Nobody answers the phone. That next day, the counselor comes in and she calls a bunch of us out, and everybody knew he was my friend. There was other kids that were his friends, and the counselor had a list of us, his friends, his close friends, that she wanted to speak to in private. So she gets us all out. It's maybe, I'd say about 15, 20 of us. And she calls us into this like little teacher-parent conference room, has us all sit down, and I guess at this point, she was under the impression that we all really knew the details of what had happened. And she was trying to do this thing where, like, trying to help us deal with our grief. But no one really, there were so many rumors going around, no one really knew what happened. So she tells us, as I'm sure you're all aware, such and such committed suicide yesterday. And I would like to speak to y'all. And if anybody's got any feelings, or they don't understand what's going on, or would like to talk, now's the time to do it. This isn't something you want to hold in. And that's when it got real to me. I think I knew the entire time I was calling, when nobody was answering, that, man, this is real. We get more into details, and that morning we come to find out he was supposed to go to court. It was like 10:30 in the morning. He was scheduled to be in court. His mom had came in his room, woke him up, told him, get dressed, you know, all the things you have to tell a 16-year-old to do, brush your teeth, make sure your clothes are straight, get ready, we got to go to court. And she told the police that she heard the gunshot. But it didn't dawn on her for several minutes what she had heard. She said she heard it, but, and like kind of like, what? And I don't know if it was her brain trying to save her from what she was going to see. It was a coping mechanism, a denial mechanism. I don't know. But for whatever reason, she didn't go back into his room for several minutes. She just went on about what she was doing, getting herself ready. And it comes close for time to leave, and she goes into the bedroom, and he's sitting on the bed, and he's slumped back against the wall, and he's got him a gun from somewhere. And rather than go to court and end up incarcerated, he decided he would end the whole situation sitting there in his bedroom. He never got to go back to school, never had his day in court, never got to see the outcome of it. And he left a whole lot of us just, I'd say, traumatized and messed up by the situation. People get in those situations, and I've told you, I come close to that one time in the hole, just being just in my darkest moments in life. And they don't stop to think about the impact that what they're about to do is how that it's gonna impact everyone else. I went to the kid's funeral, closed casket, watched a mother cry in a way that can only be shown or expressed through dealing with that type of crime, that type of self-inflicted punishment. So yeah, that's the first, man. That's the first story. I needed to share that with y'all because I hadn't talked about it ever. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. I don't know if I'm gonna do another story or 2 stories. These aren't the easiest ones to tell in the world. They're not the easiest stories I got in my bag that I like to talk about. But rest in peace, homeboy. I hope you're where you want to be. Let's get into the next story, man. Back in the early thousands, I found myself locked up. Whole bunch of dumbass charges. I got picked up. There I am sitting in jail. Been in jail a couple months now. We didn't have no TVs in the cells or nothing. We had one TV in the pod, and everybody had to share this TV. And dudes would argue about what they were going to watch. You always had one dude that was just the biggest, baddest guy that controlled the TV, or you had one guy that was like kind of like the leader of the entire dorm or pod, that he would take control of the TV to keep everybody from beefing. One thing we all agreed on watching was the news. You think, why do you want to watch the news? You're locked up. We don't know what's going on in the world. The world is passing us by. Anybody that's ever been locked up that had a TV or access to a TV will tell you there are certain things you watch, and the news being one of them. I would get up in the mornings back when I was in prison and be waiting on chow, and I'd watch the news every single morning. I'd watch the news, we'd be locked down. I'd catch the 5 o'clock, 5:30 news in the evenings, right? So here I sit in jail on all these just dumbass, stupid charges I done picked up, right? Just being young and dumb in my early 20s. We see this guy on the news, and they're talking about he's been arrested and he's currently in the jail that I'm in. This guy gets off work one night, he's going down the interstate, and he's drunk. Really, really drunk. Hits another car on the interstate, mangles his car, mangles that car, people in the car. He's on the side of the road. I don't know if he was passed out, knocked out, but they said that when they found him in his car, drunk out of his mind, he was unresponsive. You're probably thinking he heard somebody, in the other car. Not the case. He got off work that night, kicked it with a bunch of his homeboys and other guys, and just got stupid drunk, and then went by the babysitter's house a couple hours later and picked his kid up. Had his kid in the back seat, this really small child, not in a car seat, not restrained the way the kid should be, and upon impact, him hitting this other car while he was drunk, snapped the kid's neck. Killed the kid, dead on the spot. So word is spread now that this child killer, this guy that's responsible for his kid's death, is in the jail. He didn't immediately come into where I lived at. He was in another part of the jail for a couple weeks, and rumors spread fast. Word of what's happening in other parts of the jail was spread to your part of the jail. And I remember I kept hearing that, man, dudes are beating dudes' ass over there. Like, man, this dude is messed up. Dudes are just, and a lot of the guys, they weren't really beating him up or doing the things they were doing because they felt strongly against how he caused his child to die. A lot of these guys were doing it just to like pull rank. They would go in there and beat this guy up to try to shine in front of their homeboys or try to look tough or to get some cool points. You know what I mean? They was just gonna, man, beat the shit out this dude to show everybody else how gangster they were and how aggressive they could get, right? The guards get wind of it and they take the man and they put him in the hole. He's talking about doing this to himself and doing that to himself, and at the same time, you got to think his decision that night led to the death of his child. We'd find out later on, this man didn't have a criminal history. He had not been in any trouble in his life. But when your actions lead to the death of your child or another human being, you have to be held responsible. You have to be held accountable. The psych doctor goes back there and sees him, and this man is talking crazy. He's talking, I don't want to be here. I don't want to live no more. I can only imagine the pain of knowing that you are responsible for the death of your child. Like, that's just too much for me to even think about. The psych doctor agrees that the guy's telling him, I can't sleep. I'm being attacked by other inmates. I just want to stay in the hole. Like, I just want to die. Psych doctor starts putting him on medications. Trazodone, Seroquel, all these antipsychotics and sleeping medications to try to help the man cope with what he has going on. He can't stay in the hole. We don't have a PC out here. There is no PC. You don't just get to stay in the hole. You got to do something to go to the hole. They put him in the hole under investigation because the guards knew what was going on. He wouldn't tell them who it was, so he sat there while they tried to do their little investigation, and then boom, they shoot him back in the general population. This is when I see this guy for the first time, when he comes into our pod. The bruises on his face and stuff by now are pretty much healed up. There's a little bit of hints of purple and green and yellow in the corner of one of his eyes. You could tell that he hadn't been having the best time. And by now, everything has done got twisted. This inmate.com, what people got to say and what really happened. A lot of us knew what had happened because we've seen it on the news. We had been in there. But a lot of guys, they put a twist on it and made it out to be that instead of like his kid dying in this drunk driving accident, that he killed his kid. So now you got guys really, really getting at this dude. This is your everyday, average Joe white dude that, you know, looked like if you put him up against a high school cheerleader, he'd get beat up. He was just that sweet guy, that regular, just dude. He comes into my pod, and where he was at, he was lucky to be over there. Where he was at, the majority of the inmates over there weren't seriously violent inmates. With me being a repeat dude, a guy that continues to come in and out the system, anytime that I would come in, they would automatically stick me in the jail in max custody. I just was known to have violent charges. I was young and dumb. So when they bring him out, they can't put him back over there, because to put him back over there, you're feeding him back to the wolves. So they shove him in the pod with us, right? Same thing starts happening. Dudes are going in on this dude. It's to the point they're taking his food. He'd get his tray and go sit down. Somebody'd walk up to the table and pick his whole tray up and walk over to their table and sit beside their tray, dump all the food on there and take the tray and throw it away. And the guards would see this stuff. A lot of these guards aren't sympathetic to his loss, their parents, and they're thinking, you're a piece of shit. You shouldn't have been drinking and driving. You could have killed those other people, but look at you, dummy, you killed your kid. Guys would do the same thing. Gang members would, you know, tell other gang members, hey, man, go punch him in his face. He might be sitting there on the bench and somebody just walk up, boom, just punch him and knock him off the bench, right? He is not having fun at all. Like I told you, on top of dealing with the death of his son and everything that's going on and the stress of having to definitely know you're going to prison and this is going to get worse, you're being physically assaulted every day. He doesn't even have the time to mourn or really come to terms with anything, because his time in the cell is spent scared to death and dealing with what's going to happen when I come back out this cell tomorrow. They'd have to transfer him from cell to cell throughout the pod because he kept having problems with his cellmates, right? I'll never forget, man. He sat out there in front of the TV one day and dudes were talking shit. I'll go over there and slap the shit out of him. Stupid. I just going in on this dude. And he kind of had this, in the past when dudes would say stuff like that or they get ready to attack him, he'd like look over at him. But as they're saying this, he's just not doing anything. He's not even looking at him. He's not acknowledging them. It's almost like he's a statue sitting there. Like he's not home. Like there's no lights on. Like, you know what I mean? Like the cheese done slid all the way off the side of his cracker and he's just not responding to what's going on around him. They had taken this guy at this time and put him in a cell by himself because he kept having problems with his cellmates. Dude's just, now you can't, if everybody else hates him in the pod and everybody else is attacking him, he can't be in the cell with you because that makes you, you know, okay with what's going on. Dudes are going to target you. It's maybe, I want to say roughly around 5 o'clock in the morning when I hear them blow the whistle. And they would blow the whistle for several different reasons. They would blow it for count. They would blow it if a fight broke out. They would blow it if it was too loud and they were trying to get guys' attentions. But when they blow it when everybody's asleep, that's to get the immediate attention of other guards in the vicinity to come there now. I hear the whistle and I get up and I go over to the door and I'm looking, and there's a whole bunch of guards at the door, maybe 3 or 4 guards at the door, and they're all in there, and I can't see what they're doing because of the way it's angled, but I can just see that there's steadily more guards coming in. There's more guards coming in. Then we have what's called a white shirt, and a white shirt is like the shift commander. He's the guard that oversees the entire jail on that shift, right? When you see him come in, you know it's something bad, that they've pulled him out of his cushy leather office chair from behind his desk and his computer and brought him into where the inmates is. Something's going on, right? They're in the cell. It's got to be a good 10 minutes. And I can hear the one guard saying, breathe, breathe, breathe. By now, there's nurses in there. You're going to see that every time they find somebody unresponsive, the nurses are going to show up pretty fast. He didn't breathe. They ended up coming in with a gurney, pushing the gurney in the cell, putting the man on the gurney, covering him up, and wheeling him up out of there. We come to find out a short time later that all the medicine the doctor had been giving him, trazodone, Seroquel, a whole list of different types of medications that were psych meds and sleeping meds, he had been saving up. He hadn't been taking them. The same nurse that would give him his nighttime medication wasn't looking to see if he actually swallowed it. He would put the pill in his mouth and either save it in the side of his lip or in the side of his cheek, under his tongue. No pill, and walk off. He did this long enough that he was able to collect enough of these pills and swallow them and take his own life. Yet another situation where he never saw the outcome of his trial. I can't say if he did it because he couldn't deal with what the inmates were doing to him, which was pretty brutal, or if he did it because he couldn't live with himself and what he had done when it came to his child. Me personally, I could 100% see doing something like that if I caused my child to die. My little boy Noah, my son Isaiah, if I did something that caused one of them to lose their life, I'm not sure I'm strong enough to live with that. I'm not sure I would be able to wake up tomorrow and be okay with going on and living my life. So I don't know why he decided to take his life, just that he did. Let's get into the next story. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold off on the third video for today, man. Just in telling those two puts a knot in my chest. My hands are all sweaty and clammy. It takes me back to bad times, man. And thinking about seeing 2 7-year-old boys, 2 brothers, 2 twins. Thinking about that and reliving that today, and thinking back to when I watched them be brought out that trailer. That's a rough one to have to mentally relive and emotionally relive. Thinking back to my homeboy in high school and the cries his mother let out at that funeral and the viewing and everything. That's rough to relive. Watching dude be victimized like that daily and beat, and thinking to myself, I wonder how he feels about killing his kid, and then watching him, not long later, be brung out on a gurney covered up with a sheet. That was something that took a little while to process, and now that I'm a father and talking about it, it's even that much harder to process. It's that much harder to take in, because as a father, there is nothing I love more in this world than my children. They say you have to love you, and I do love me, but I don't love anything on this planet like I do my kids. Nothing. Nothing comes close to comparing to my children. For anybody that ever has any type of thoughts of harming yourself, doing something along those lines, or ending it all, there are places you can reach out to. There are hotlines. All you have to do is look them up. They're right there. And people that will listen to you. You may think nobody cares. You may think you're all alone. You may think that what you're dealing with will never pass. I'm here to tell you that it will. I'm also here to tell you that if you don't deal with whatever you got going on and face it and run at it head first and just accept it and do your best to just conquer it, if you don't do that and you decide to take the other route, that next option you're taking doesn't make things any better. Don't give up the greatest gift God ever gave you. The greatest thing you'll ever have in this lifetime is your life. There's a lot of people watching this, a lot of people that will watch this, that their clock has begun ticking, that they know they will die, and they would do anything to go back and have some more life, or turn their hands of the clock backwards and be able to live some more. But that's not how life works. So before you do something so selfish, so self-centered, that you may feel at the time is the only option, stop and think. Stop and think about how beautiful it is just to be here. Stop and think about where you want to be in 5 or 10 years. Stop and think about your kids. If you don't have kids, stop and think about the kids you want to have, the names you would give them, the times you would share. Stop and think about what it would do to your mother or your father if they had to stand above you. This is a beautiful life. Even on its worst days, your worst moments, the worst things you may deal with, this life is still beautiful. Don't let situations or people around you rob you of it. I hope y'all enjoyed today's story. As I've told y'all before, these detention centers, these prisons, facilities, these jails, they're all just crazier worlds inside of this already crazy world we live in. And as always, y'all know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to keep y'all entertained. Are you not entertained? And like always, this is Jay Williams. Let's live life. And to all my real ones, and there are some real ones watching, because y'all still watching me. Y'all know how we do, man. Salute.